G'day. How did you like the Austrian Grand Prix? Allow me to go through my thoughts on the race in just a moment. How did you like the Austrian Grand Prix? Of course, it's the first race of the season and we're sitting here in early July. So let's run through what happened at this particular event. I want to go right back to the start, and the first look we had at the Austrian Paddock, markedly different to what you'd normally expect. As you can see on the left-hand side here, those sea containers painted white and with the driver's photos on the front. This is what it looks like from overhead. See, normally you'd have all of the engineering gear this side here, and you've got the paddock here, and on the other side you'd have double-storey motorhomes. That wasn't the case, obviously, for this race. So we had a different setup altogether, and I think everybody was pretty happy with them. Somebody said, how does Red Bull get their own suite? That's actually stationed there for most of the year. But Red Bull didn't get to use it. They had to use exactly the same configuration as the other teams. So that wasn't used for Red Bull, it was used for the FIA and F1. So these little demountables will be taken to each of the closed races, and every setup is identical. On the left, you have a driver's demountable, and on the right, another one for your two drivers, and these will be packed up after the second Austrian Grand Prix, and they'll be road transported across to Hungary, which is only about a 5-hour drive. Catering wise, how did it differ? Because there was no big hospitality suite with their own individual team catering. It was common catering, and all of the teams would roll up. They would have their own area to sit because it was actually upstairs where the Paddock Club normally is, and that's the big dollar tickets. I don't know what that is, many thousands of US dollars per race to sit up there and watch the events. And of course the teams got to use it for their lunch. And the food was pretty good. From all reports, I had one of the trainers tell me that they thought this was a great meal. Looks fine to me. It was served in a cafe, canteen style atmosphere, and each team would have their own separate area to dine in. Out in the paddock come Thursday, lots of signage asking people to maintain their distance 2 meters, as you can see, and some bins down here for wipes and the like. Everybody was urged to obviously wash their hands regularly and maintain that safe distance, and importantly they had to wear a mask, and there's those stations for cleaning their hands all the way up and down the paddock. This lady here probably had one of the most important jobs as a cleaner. She was having to work double time to make sure everything was spick and span at the track. Media wise, there were definitely far fewer TV networks than normal, and the way the interviews were done, dramatically different. As you can see here, Daniel Ricciardo doesn't touch a microphone. He stands there, albeit on a bit of a lean, as you can see. And the TV crews have to stand a minimum 2 meters away. Now that's unusual because normally the cameras are right in your face. And if you look at this particular press conference here out the back of the Renault garage, lots of TV and media in the front rows and then punters everywhere in the back. So straight away you take out the punters and you have far fewer TV crews to worry about. This is the media pen where the drivers go and do their interviews after qualification and also after the race. Markedly different again. For a start, as you can see, minimal TV crews, all well spaced apart. The drivers come up in the middle here, and some will stand this side and some will stand that side. This is Kimi Räikkönen standing in front of a microphone here with a windsock on it, and he obviously talks at normal level, but I imagine that Mariana would have to shout her questions across that 2 meter divide. Photography wise, now I'm not there, as I mentioned in my past videos. I'm doing this from Perth, but I've got 2 shooters working for me. But every photographer who was embedded with a team had to wear the team shirt. So this is the photographer for Alfa Romeo. Normally, he would have whatever he wears normally, but this particular race and every other race that's closed, he's going to have to wear the Alfa Romeo shirt. He stays with the team at the track. In other words, he can only go in the paddock. He can't go outside the paddock. And at night, he stays with the crew as well. So they are in that particular bubble. But then there are 10 or so other photographers that are allowed to move freely around the track, but they can't go into the paddock. So F1 has kept everybody in bubbles, such that if there's an outbreak of COVID, and I must say they tested some 4,000 plus people over the past week or so, I think, and not one test has come back positive. But if they do get a positive test, it means they only have to quarantine certain people rather than the whole of the paddock. This was one of the most notable differences for me. When you see this shot of Lewis walking into the paddock, for a start, he hasn't got his scooter. Normally, he would have a scooter because it allows him to get from one place to the other quickly, and perhaps more importantly, he doesn't have to stop every couple of meters for an autograph or a selfie. But given there are no punters in the paddock, he could walk straight through uninterrupted. But you'll see here, the media are a couple of metres away. Now, normally, they are going to be right in his face. And often I've heard drivers say, do you really need to be that close? Because their cameras are sometimes 50 centimetres and they walk backwards with them, which makes it very hard as a photographer to get a shot. So that was another noticeable difference. Let's jump back to Thursday and go through what happened. He had a track walk. Now, the interesting thing with the track walk was that TV could go out on the tracks with them, but photographers all had to stay behind the wire. And up on the left here, if you have a look up here, they're just draping this huge banner. This would end up being a DHL banner. Yes, that's coming around turn 1. This is normally a great shot because you get lovely crowds and lots of colour in the background, particularly on qualification days and racing days. But now you've just got empty seats and a DHL banner. Seb had a cast of 5 walking the track with him, all of them, of course, wearing masks as they did the lap of the track. Charles Leclerc was out there too. He chose to ride a bike, and this is one of his Stavello bikes, which is an electric bike, but also you can pedal it. So he was out there with his crew, not as many. I think there was only 2, Jock Clear and his engineer Brian. And of course he was wearing his mask and a rather magnificent Hublot watch. A couple of people asked, are Netflix at the track? Yes, they are. They are embedded with one team, I believe. I think it's Red Bull. Obviously they can't go from team to team because they're then a risk of spreading the COVID if indeed they come down with it. So they are there with some pretty impressive kit. Now, if you go back to last year, might even been a year before actually, this is outside the main grandstand on a Saturday and Sunday. This is called the green carpet. It's an opportunity for the fans to get an autograph or a selfie, but that didn't happen this year. Instead, we had this device set up in the paddock where a driver would go and stand in front of one of these cameras and they would have a one-on interaction with a fan. Those fans got the opportunity through I think it was an internet competition that various winners were picked. So Sergio Perez had a chat with some people. Roman Grosjean also had a chat and some lovely flowers around the edge here. And somebody was lucky enough to get a one-on-one chat with Lewis Hamilton. And I would suggest that would be a rare thing and something to celebrate. Let's jump forward to quali day. Max Verstappen qualified 3rd. Here he is coming past what normally is a stand full of Dutch people. Not this race. This instead is a huge big Heineken sign along with celebrating Dutch passion from home. Other changes that you probably noticed, the weigh-in at the end of quali on the track. Now normally this is done in the FIA garage, but Max had to step on the scales out here on the track. No one watching really, except a few officials and a couple of photographers and obviously TV crews. Another change, the interview on the track is done with the drivers. They stand in front of a radio microphone here. They don't touch the mic, same as in the media pen. Answer questions from whoever it is asking those questions, who's at least 2 metres away. These 2 fellas were the happiest on the day. Valtteri obviously a little more happier than Lewis because Valtteri snared pole position for the first race of the 2020 season. I recorded that section earlier in the day. It's now night time in Australia. I've just finished watching the race and what an amazing event. So let's quickly run through the day photographically. I had 2 beautiful guys from France shooting for me this race and it was a beautiful day in Austria, 27 odd degrees, warm, clear skies. We had, of course, before the race, all the drivers came out onto the track for the national anthem and they stood on the carpet. Now, normally they would stand shoulder to shoulder in one line, but with social distancing, they were moved to staggered, one at the front, one at the back. Now, it took me a little while to work this out, but I think that the system they used was the guys that were going to stand and not take the knee stood at the back. Those who would take the knee, obviously, at the front. And Esteban Ocon, he was way late. I don't know what he was doing, but he ended up sprinting out there well after everyone had lined up. So in the end, it was 14 guys taking the knee and 6 not for various reasons. I like this photo of Kimi and Seb having a chat on the grid before the national anthem was played. And of course, these 2 guys were teammates, and I think it's nice that they still have a great relationship. And let's jump to the start. It was 3:10 p.m. local time, and what I love here is the empty grandstand with all the signage all the way along it. And that stuff's not cheap to produce, so it's made quite an impact, and of course that's there for the 2 races, and I dare say that they will take that to Barcelona and run that in the grandstand opposite the pits in Barcelona. So 20 cars on the grid, they take off. First corner, nice condensed, and once again in the background you can see that empty grandstand. Of course, this is the first time we've seen an empty grandstand and 20 cars on the track, but we're going to see it for probably another 6 or 7 races, maybe even more. Who knows what's going to happen in the future. The safety car, as you know, played a huge part in today and provided a fair amount of excitement for everybody concerned. Sebastian Vettel, he had a shit of a day, didn't he? Got turned around, about 2/3 the way through the race. Ended up finishing 10th. It's actually second last of all the finishes because 9 didn't finish, unfortunately. This was an interesting happening. Lando Norris and Sergio Perez leaving pit lane and getting quite close to each other. And let's jump through now to our winner, Valtteri Bottas. Cool and calm all day, and you would have been pretty excited to see all the incidents that happened. Charles Leclerc did well, coming from 7th to finish in 2nd position. But this, I think, is the story of the day. Lando Norris coming 3rd, his first podium, and it was a great moment to watch. I've done a little bit of work with Lando, and I find him to be a tremendous fella, and he's got great management, and his family also appear at a few races with Adam and Mum Siska. A beautiful image of team boss Zach Brown hugging his young charge in Lando Norris, and if you watch the TV you probably also saw that when he was given the opportunity to spray his champagne, he just poured it all over himself, while of course Valtteri takes a swig. He always does that. With only 20 odd photographers at the track, and I wasn't able to be there, I was remarkably lucky to be able to work with both Florent Gooden and Antoine Vincent, who provided some beautiful images, and they will be in this particular book here that you can get online and order right now, Austria 2020 Race 1, and you'll get that sent within 8 to 14 business days, almost anywhere in the world. Thanks for sticking through to the end. If you've liked the video, I'll know you've liked it because you would have hit the like button and hopefully subscribed. Remember, you can get my Austrian GP photo book. It's available right now at kimillman.com. And for my best pics live from the track and all through the year, head to Instagram at Kim Illman. Thanks for watching. Stay passionate.